Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And I was recently reading through a lot of my YouTube comments. Believe it or not, I still enjoy doing that after 4 years. I love your feedback. You know, some comments definitely more than others. But you've got to take the good with the bad, right? And I noticed that you loved my bathtub 15 kills video. Now, a lot of people enjoyed that because it was a player getting 15 kills. Other players enjoyed that because it was looking back at a period of World of Tanks that has now been forgotten, with the whole look around El Haluf, how it previously was, and talking about a lot of the differences in the game. And so I thought, why not try and combine that aspect with a look at some of the most insane tanks in the game before they were nerfed, and what better way to start that off than looking at the AMX-50 Foch 155. This tier 10 French auto-loading tank destroyer used to be one of the most fearsome, or perhaps the most fearsome tier 10 tank in the game. Now we're going back quite far here. This tank was nerfed in patch 8.11 along with all of the other tier 10 tank destroyers effectively. And that was in February 2014. And the reason why the Foch 155 was absolutely mental is for a variety of reasons. Its armor was crazy. They nerfed the hell out of the armor, as I'll describe in a second. But also because it has an autoloader and it had 850 average damage. All of the 155mm and also the 152mm wielding tier 10 tank destroyers did 850 damage. Your T110E3, your T110E4, your Object 268, for example, all of them did 850 average damage with every single shot, and I guess Wargaming felt that this was too much and that health points didn't seem to really matter, and we can see why when the T44 gets eradicated like that. Although the T44, it didn't have that many hit points that in now with the unnerfed state that the Foch 155 couldn't do that still, and it certainly would. This thing rips apart tier 8 tier 8 vehicles and even tier 9 tanks now. But it's just the fact that the 750 alpha damage doesn't feel so special when you're engaging tier 10 tanks, as we're going to see later on in this replay, that back before 8.11, it certainly did feel a lot more monstrous. And I've got a bunch of notes as to how this tank was nerfed. Firstly, the lower front plate was reduced by 20mm in thickness to 100mm. The top of the roof was reduced from 50mm to 30mm, making the vehicle so much more vulnerable to high explosive rounds. Oh, here we go. Yeah, 876 damage after killing the entirety of a T-34, pretty much. Yeah, crazy. Also, the roof above the engine was nerfed from 40 to 20. Wow, high explosive rounds absolutely decimating for the Foch 155. The rear of the tank from 50 to 40, and also this was one of the most painful changes. The whole of the side armor was nerfed from 50mm to 40mm, and now everybody's favorite feature is the overmatch mechanic, or maybe not favorite feature, but one of the most hotly contested or discussed features, at least coming up for the 917 patch and all the Swedish tank destroyers. And so that meant that previously only 151mm caliber guns could overmatch the side of a Foch, but now 121mm guns can overmatch the side of a Foch, and that's a very big difference. This E100 couldn't overmatch the side of the Foch previously, but now a tier 7 heavy tank such as the IS could. The E100 putting in a heat round there, the IS unable to go through the tracks of the tank there. Where did that heat round go? Oh yeah, right in the weak point of the Foch. And this was another change. Can you believe it? Previously, this tank, all of this area here, counted as spaced armor, and the only way to actually damage the tank was to hit this part of the vehicle. Now, in 8.11, Wargaming changed it so a much larger part of the tank, and only really the viewports on the outside count as spaced armor, and so that dramatically increased the size of the weak points on the top of the Foch 155. And so, also, I nearly forgot, just this like small case of the fact that the tank lost 200 horsepower of its engine. So you are seeing here definitely one of the fastest tank destroyers ever. It had 1,200 horsepower engine, nerfed to 1,000, which was absolutely crippling for the tank's mobility. So, I should have mentioned that we are watching a replay here by Haal, and Haal is going to have one of the greatest games of World of Tanks that I have ever seen. Already so far in under 5 minutes, he's picked up 7,000 damage. Oh, I know, I keep remembering all these little tidbits of information. And one of the things that the Foch 155 felt really bad about is that all of the other tier 10 tank destroyers got a slight rate of fire buff when they nerfed the alpha damage, but the Foch 155 didn't. They just said, well, the tank is too good how it is. We're not going to compensate for the alpha damage nerf in the magazine. And I think that alpha damage, the 850 to 750, was just absolutely crazy for this tank. Because when you've got a single shot gun, it doesn't really matter so much if you change the alpha damage from 850 to 750 and you give it a bit of a rate of fire buff. But for the Foch 155 even, changing the alpha damage from 850, which allowed it to do 2,550 average damage per magazine, down to 750, now means that it can only do 2,250. And that is very significant. That means that when you're engaging, for example, a T-34 on the enemy team, you're now only a 50-50 to kill him, whereas previously you would have to mega low roll. So he shuts down the ISU-152, and that T-54, well, that was a terrible mistake there, allowing him to get a nice shot into the side of the turret there, or the side of the hull, and the T-54 goes down. You know what, even though Haal is on a top gun and 8,500 damage, his team aren't assaulting very well here. Well, apart from the SU-122-54 on the enemy team, who has apparently TK'd someone, so that's a good result for Haal. He's got some heavy tanks pushing in and along the south, but I don't know how long they're going to last against an IS-4 and an IS-7. But Haal now turns round, and the Foch 155 does have a rather long reload, with the same reload back then as it was now. And he decides to just drive towards this T-32 and pressure him. And one of the crazy things about the Foch 155 is that unlike a lot of the other tank destroyers, its traverse speed is so good, especially on the hard terrain here, the T-32 can't surround it. And so while the T-32 thought, oh, I've got this guy, I'm going to get his side, stupid tank destroyer coming and driving in my face. No, Foch 155, good enough track traverse to be able to turn around and shut down the T-32. Now, I don't like what Haal does here. He's rushing in with a single shell into a tank that he's never going to be able to kill with a single shot. I'm not sure if he was just thinking right now, I want to do 10,000 damage, and he was thinking, yeah, I've done my 10,000 damage, I was going to lose anyway, this is the greatest game. And he takes a couple of rounds from the SU-122-54 and the T-44 as well. He actually ricochets that shot. I believe the SU-122-54 is aiming for the weak points of the Foch, but as we can see, unable to go through the spaced armor on there. Now the 122-54 comes around the corner, ricochets another shell, and can you believe it? Haal is still alive. Now he's got the support of an E-75. I think really that was the worst thing that Haal does in this replay. He could have just chilled. Why not reload fully and be able to go in and shut down the SU-122-54 and put the extra round into the T-44, or at least get your E-75 in the combat? But I think Haal was really thinking about that 5-digit World of Tanks damage score, something that I've never been able to get. I've come pretty close. I've got 9,000 odd damage a bunch of times, but never the magic 10k. So Haal now just showing this T-44. He's almost completely redundant against a tier 10 tank destroyer, and the E-75 handles himself well against the SU-122-54 just in time for all of the tanks to be able to come in, from the south. It's very important that they did make that push, because now they can avoid getting shot in the rear and turn the front part of the Foch 155, which is certainly the thickest part of the armor, towards their opponents. Talking about stupid T-54s, I think we got another one here. Not only does this T-54 drive out in front of a Foch 155, but he also stops to allow Haal to get a clean shot into him. Now this game is neck and neck right now. This is an assault, so there's only 1 minute and 6 seconds left on this replay. Haal is only going to be able to reload once, because the reload time for this entire magazine is pretty much about 50 seconds. And it should be too, right? But back then, doing 2,550 damage every 50 seconds is pretty crazy. So Haal needs to help out his E-75 here. How healthy are the enemy tanks? That's so important to consider when you're playing your autoloaders. The IS-7 is a one-shot. The IS-4, however, is going to require the entirety of Haal's magazine unless he rolls extra high to be able to take down, or if he can help the E-75. Now with only 33 seconds left on the game, the IS-7 seems to be able to want to come stupidly right down in front of him. The IS-7 should have just turned around and ran away. He doesn't need to kill all the tanks to be able to win the game on assault, remember. Now Haal puts one into the side, 872. The E-75 has done some damage to him, and Haal finishes off the IS-4 with a great shot into the side. 833 damage, something that you would have to roll exceptionally high on the Foch these days to be able to take out the enemy tank. But back then, that isn't even a high roll. So what an absolutely insane result for Haal here in his Foch 155 in its unnerved state back in patch 8.7. He picks up 11 kills, nearly 14,000 damage, and he wins the game with 13 seconds left on the clock with some flawless play apart from, I'd say, the awkward moment against the SU-122-54 when I thought he had given up hope. But then I think he has the realization, whoa, I can actually win this, let's go for it. And he also showed us exactly why this tank was nerfed so hard, from the thinning of the side armor, the rear armor, the top armor of the tank, from the thinning of the lower plate of the vehicle, the nerfing of the alpha damage of the main gun without buffing the rate of fire, or at least the reload of the vehicle, and also the widening of its top weak point. And I'm pretty sure that this kind of result would simply just be impossible these days in World of Tanks. So Haal picked up a Pools medal for his 11 kills, the no longer available Sniper medal for achieving at least 85% hits with 1,000 damage, and also the Steel Wall, ricocheting 9 of the 14 hits that he received from pretty high caliber guns. Haal's marksmanship was impeccable considering he was at short to mid range here, hitting every shot that he fired. And with the 293mm of penetration this tank has, every single one of those penetrated, even shooting fairly well armored tanks, or exceptionally well armored tanks, like the IS-4 in the E100. Haal was pretty much a one-man army here, just under 14,000 damage. 6 times what anyone else on his team was able to achieve, and he received 1,782 base experience points, which is simply gigantic. So Haal, thank you for uploading this replay over 3 years ago. It's like a time capsule that we can open up now to reminisce on World of Tanks past. And hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did and you want to see me cover more tanks before they were nerfed, then give this video a like and let me know in the comments down below what other vehicles you'd like me to cover. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.